Oh howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. So today I wanted to put together a guide for the strategies I'm intending to use for early currency generation in the Scourge League. So this is both the strategies I intend to use, but also a number of other ones that I think will be quite good for different builds. The first thing that needs to be said is that patch notes are still in flux and things can still change. There was a slight change today to the Brass Dome, a unique item that's getting an overhaul in this league, and there was a change where originally it was going to have a boost to all maximum resistances. That was changed to just maximum elemental resistances. So all sorts of little changes like this can happen. Nothing is quite final until a patch goes live. And you just keep that in mind. If something seems too good to be true that you've got in mind, that it might actually be. That said, I don't think we'll see any massive changes to the planned patch notes yet. So general points first, then we'll talk about specific strategies. Play to your build's strengths. Some characters are exceptionally good at boss killing, such as the seismic trap builds that have started being really popular in the last couple of months. So these builds have okay clear, but they are fantastic when it comes to killing bosses. A build like this wants to be spending more of its time killing bosses and less of its time clearing. On the flip side, there are builds that are the complete opposite, that are absolutely specialized in clearing trash as fast as possible. This can include things like most Ignite proliferation builds, builds like the Corrupting Fever Tornado Shot build that's become popular lately. All of these are builds that are focused on killing trash monsters quickly and that are pretty mediocre at killing bosses. As a result, they want to spend their time killing trash monsters and taking their loot, not trying to struggle with bosses and taking theirs. So the second thing that needs to be said is you need to understand the nuances of the early league economy and how it differs from a late league Path of Exile economy. And we'll come into that in a sec when we talk about items that change value a lot over a league. Now I'm focused on softcore trade. Hardcore trade has similar dynamics and you can adapt a lot of these strategies, but supply is lower in hardcore and demand is different. So a lot of items that have no life but that are quite good at damage projection, like for instance Beric's Respite, tend to have more demand in a softcore environment, whereas items that are very defensive in nature, like the Brass Dome, will have more demand in a hardcore environment. Any comments that I make about drop rates relate to 3.15. They sometimes get changed, sometimes by stealth. Who knows, I'm going to say that Heist is the best place in the game to get drop anywhere uniques, but maybe there will be some significant changes to that in 3.16 that are not in the patch notes. So just be aware of that. It is possible that things can change. You'll notice there's little discussion of Scourge mechanics in this video. That's intentional. Focus on the known for now, but do keep an eye on the league mechanics potential and try it out here and there. Keep on top of how the league mechanic feels and give it some experimentation. It might turn out that it is the best way to make currency in the league. It might turn out that something from Path of Exile's history works out to be a better option. So, building on the section about playing to your build strengths. There's lots of profitable things to do in PoE, but no build can do everything perfectly, and you should focus on what your build is good at. If you are playing a build that has outstanding clear speed but bad bossing, and you're really struggling with a boss, do not be afraid to pay another player to do that boss for you. Yes, you might be very experienced with the Baran the Crusader fight, but if it's going to take you 6 minutes and 4 deaths to beat him, then wouldn't it be better to just pay someone else 25 chaos to kill Baran in 3 seconds? Be aware that that is always an option. These sorts of deals are generally negotiated in the channel Trade 820 in-game, if it's only a small amount of currency that's involved, or on the Discord, the Forbidden Trove, if it's a much higher risk environment. Like for instance, if you want someone to complete your Cortex for you, then that's when you might use the Forbidden Trove instead. Now, the early league is a demand-dominated economy. By the end of week 1, most uniques will be in a state of complete oversupply. As more players get to clearing maps fast, good items will become cheap as the league economy gets flooded with drops. But week 1 of a league is not like that. Even quite common items like Tabula Rasa or Wasp Nest can be in high demand early on. And for rare items like Impulse's Broken Heart, this is much more the case. And quantity of items tends to dominate quality of items early, so it's better to have 3 Chevron's Wrappings early league than to have 1 perfectly rolled one, whereas later in the league, it's actually the opposite way around. Now, this applies to both global drops and to target farmable boss drops. Remember that on day 1, everyone has nothing and wants something, whereas later on, every time someone upgrades an item, assuming the item that they're upgrading from is not dumpster tier, the old item is going to return to the economy. It's going to be put into a for sale tab. If someone who is using Cold Iron Point happens to be one of the first players in the game to get a mirror tier physical spells dagger, they are going to keep their Cold Iron Point and they are going to put it into their stash tab and put it up for sale. And that means that there'll be an extra Cold Iron Point entering the economy, as well as all the Cold Iron Points that drop for that player. So it's a seller's market. The further ahead of progression you are, the more favorable the market. So that means leveling fast helps. Reaching endgame as fast as possible helps. It's too late now to do any meaningful practice on your leveling skills, but that's fine. That's something you can improve for later leagues if you want. And then there's a little bit on first mover advantage, which is just basically reiterating that in Pulse's Broken Heart, the earliest ones will be worth more than the later ones. And the reason for this is that, especially for clear speed multipliers, early on groups will pool their resources to focus on efficiency of looting early on. So they will pool their resources to buy the first impulses in the market for a much higher price than it will be worth later on. And they're confident that the amount that they overpay for that impulses, they will be able to amortize that by virtue of just all of the extra loot that they find during that period. So being in maps fast is a huge advantage, but so is being first to other content like Heist or Shaper, etc. There's a number of items that are underpriced early. Years ago, the conventional wisdom was farm Chaos Orbs early, then use them to buy Exalts while Exalts are still cheap. This sort of still works, but you can do better than Exalted Orbs. What you want to do is look for consumable items that are extremely coveted late in a league, but too precious to use early on for most players. Now, obviously, the Exalted Orb does fit that category, but the Mirror of Kalandra is even better. You're not going to be able to afford a mirror yourself early in the league, but you can afford potentially a Mirror Shard if you're an efficient farmer. And if you're not quite at that level, you can afford a few copies of 7 Years Bad Luck. 7 Years Bad Luck is often available for less than half an Exalt early in a league, and late in a league it can be 1.5 quite frequently. You can also buy pieces of a Headhunter, such as the Divination card, the Nurse, or one of my personal favourites is the Tempering Orb. This is a Heist exclusive drop, and something that is often available for a little bit under an Exalt early in a league, but that can be as much as 6 to 8 Exalts late in a league. The Tempering Orb has been the single item that has increased the most against the Exalted Orb in the last leagues, and as a result, it's an excellent item to pick up early. One thing I will say is that people often ask, should I do the Chaos recipe early? My advice here, and a lot of people will disagree with this, but my advice here is do the Chaos recipe if and only if it will help you get a large multiplier in clear speed quickly. So for instance, if you're using a 4-link and you want to upgrade to a Tabula Rasa, do the Chaos recipe in order to get currency to upgrade to a Tabula. But once you've got that Tabula and the next upgrades are going to be expensive, at that point, I would suggest stopping doing the Chaos recipe. It's just not as efficient as it used to be. And I find that it ends up costing you more time in inventory Tetris than it will actually make you currency. You can always get much better returns by just going and running more heists. So our first strategy that we're going to talk about out of 10 is Heist. Heist is super lucrative at all sorts of character power levels and has by far the highest drop rates for unique items. This is drop anywhere uniques. Literally every type of regular contract is lucrative early. So whether it be a demolition contract, whether it be a perception contract, whether it be a perception contract, whether it be an agility contract, all of them are really good early on. On a weaker character, you can just simply buy heist contracts in bulk, buy coins in bulk, and then do what I term loot and scoot. This is a strategy where you ignore the main objective, you just go in, take a really safe approach of walking up to chests, opening chests, and then just walking out with all of the loot that you can carry, but just with your alert level just a bit below 100%. When you're at a point where opening one more chest would set off the alarm, that's when you leave. That's a generally lucrative setup that you can do early in a league. Stronger characters, though, can do the objective too, and this will grant extremely good XP. But the biggest reward is actually often the lower tier replicas and experimented items that are only found in blueprints. These, even at low monster levels, are really good. There's just an enormous amount of uniques that only come from Heist, and that a number of these are in really high demand early on. Additionally, there's a good chance for your replica unique items to be 5-linked or even 6-linked, and getting something like a 6-linked, even just a replica infractum, not a bow that people really want a lot. although it's perfectly fine. It's like it's a good starter bow, but it's not great. Getting a 6-link replica Infractum in a Grand Heist is going to set you up really nicely early in a league. And there's things much better than a replica Infractum you can get. So even low monster level replica and experimented items blueprints are great. They drop great items frequently enough to be really worth it. You can also experiment with enchanted armaments heists. This is Grand Heists, this is blueprints. These are always underestimated early on. They bias towards excellent rolls on the rare items that you'll get from them, and excellent links on the items. It feels like they might roll fusing orbs on the items like 50 to 100 times each, and take the most heavily linked outcome that comes from them. These fall off hard over a couple of days, but if you sell your good drops fast, you can make a lot of currency out of these. By day 7 or so though, usually only about item level 82 plus bases will be any good from the enchanted armaments, except for the odd, really odd rare item that you might get there. Like you might get something like a prophecy wand that's got a caster enchant on it. That sort of thing is quite rare. So heist caveats. This is not self-sustainable content. Unlike doing Atlas progression, you will need to buy contracts. Additionally, spending time in Heist means you are sabotaging your Atlas progression. This is something you're going to have to catch up at some point, and it is going to hurt to be behind on it. Gem blueprints should be saved for later. These just aren't that good early on, mostly because people are focused on upgrading different pieces of their gear. So if someone's got a tabula rasa, their upgrade plan in their mind might be, firstly, I want a 5-link impulses. Then I want a 6-link impulses. Then, and only then, will I start messing around with things like getting anomalous gems that are good for my build. And so they tend to just hold off on getting those rewards for the time being. And that means that it's not really a seller's market. It can actually be a buyer's market on anomalous gems early on. Last caveat is you want to sell your 6-links fast while they're still worth something. Drop prices aggressively if needed to get them out the door because you want currency. You don't want to be holding a bunch of 6-links that will end up being vended for Divine Orbs later in the league. And this goes double for 5-links. Second strategy to discuss is Valdo's Rest Strongboxes, and this is revolved around Twice Tempted and Tamper Proof, two of the nodes that you can get from the Maven passive points. So Corrupt Strongboxes semi-frequently drop 6-socket 6-linked items or 6-socket 5-linked items, and these are often quite usable early on. Not usually as weapons, but as chess pieces. 6-links with bad mods will sell well early on, but prices will collapse fast on them, and you don't need to be first to get much benefit here, but you do need to be fairly close to it. So this is something to do if you're in maps in 8 hours in, then this is okay. If you get to maps like 16 hours after league start, then this is going to be quite a bit worse because the market will already be somewhat flooded. You only need 1 or 2 Watchstones in Valdo's Rest. You do need 4 Maven points in the region, so that means you need to do the Maven 3-way and the Maven 4-way fight. You want to discount aggressively on these Corrupt 6-links, and you also want to combine this with option 7, which is just fast map clearing. A third option is Haewark Essences. Early on, people want all sorts of essences. Late in a league, people generally only want a couple of different types of essences. So something like a Deafening Essence of Loathing will, in most leagues, not sell very well late in the league. But early on, people will have uses for them. And Zana Essence is an option this league as well, which makes this even better. So spamming Haewark maps is very viable and can mass produce essences. You want to sell at Shrieking tier for Dread, because of the specific crafter demand for that essence, and Deafening tier otherwise. You want to overcharge for bulk quantities. If the market is saying that a particular Deafening essence is worth 9 chaos and you have 8 of them, you should not be asking 72 chaos. You should be asking 90 chaos for your 8 essences. Also combine this with just general fast map clear. The next strategy I want to outline is something that is less known, but that I think is very, very doable. And this is Glennach Abyss farming. This requires getting to tier 15 maps fast. So Lightless Legion is incredible in tier 15 plus maps early, at a time when item level 86 plus bases will sell really well, and lots of them will sell. This is non-influence bases. This is just a way to mass produce non-influence bases like Val Regalia's item level 86, and weapons item level 86, Imperial Claws in particular, thicker bows. These sorts of things will sell for a long time. Stygian Vices are great too, and you will get Stygian Vices doing this. This is going to require you to farm up to 4 Glennach Watchstones and then 6 Maven points, at which point you're going to spec the entire Abyss side. And once you've done that, you will be running maps and looking for those really juicy abyssal depths. When you do get an abyssal depths, every monster in it will be monster level 86 plus, and that means that all their drops will be item level 86 plus. Breach, but not in maps. So this is our strategy number 5, and the reason I'm saying this is a boss killing strategy, but it's something that's a little bit different because popular content creator Grimro is advocating an early farm breaches in map strategy. He's a great player and he's influential amongst the top couple % of players, and so this is going to result in a lot of people following in his footsteps. I fear that this might cause an oversupply of breach stones. I could be wrong on this front, but I sort of expect that a lot of people will try to follow Grimro and will copy his strategies well. And as a result, I think we might see breachstones a little cheaper than they've been in the past. If this is not the case, so if prices on breachstones don't fall off this league, then you could very much consider a Lyra Arthane breach strategy. So if you've got a lot of bossing experience, there is a lot to make from doing the hidden early. Maven's Invitation the Hidden is one of the very hardest fights in the game. It puts you against all 4 of the pure breach lords. So this is monster level 83 versions of Zoth, Esh, Tull, and Ulnatol. No Chayula, but you've got the other 4. And you'll have to fight 2 of them at a time, and then after a certain period of time, the other 2 will be unleashed upon you as well, whether you're ready or not. The worst thing about this is that you can be forced into a situation of fighting Tull and Esh simultaneously. Tull has an ability that screams, "Come to me right now or die." That's the frontal cone that he's got. And Esh has an ability where she teleports to you and then charges up a massive attack that tells you basically run away from me or die. If both of these abilities go off at once, then no matter how skilled a player you are, you kind of need to log out or else you're going to go splat. As well as that, the Hidden is just a fight against brutally high statted monsters. So if you've got a lot of bossing experience, then there's lots to make from doing the Hidden early. Demand for Zoth's Blood, Pandemonious, and the Surrender is huge, and as well as that, there's a number of other items too. Importantly, these hidden runs have a new drop. This is Flawless Breachstones. These are going to drop from Maven's Invitation the Hidden, as far as we know so far, and they're going to be in hot demand as well. So for that reason, I think that Breach is a solid option if you've got an extremely powerful boss killing character and you're okay with trading for Breachstones. If it turns out that farming breaches in maps is still really good, then you can definitely tune into what Grimro's got to say on how to get that set up, because he's got some excellent advice on that. Number 6 is other boss killing. So Guardian maps unlock difficult 4-way fights, the Formed and the Twisted. These are easier than Maven's Invitation the Hidden. They will grant huge improvements to your drops from typical map boss killing. And the Shaper and the Elder have outstanding drops, and if you know the fights very well, they're doable on very bad gear. Now that does take a fair bit of knowledge of the fights, but they are fights that you can learn. Guardian's Aid and Uber Elder encounters are the goal low if you can manage them. They are super lucrative early in a league if you can get there. Guardian's Aid being one of the Uncharted Realms passives that causes any Shaper or Elder Guardian you encounter to, upon hitting 1/3 of its life, it will pull a second Guardian into the map and it will heal to full. So you'll start out fighting the Guardian of the Hydra, then 2/3 of the way through the fight, the Hydra will regen to full life and you'll suddenly be facing the Phoenix as well. But the second Guardian that you're fighting will have a good chance to drop their fragments. And this is what makes it so lucrative. You can also act as a boss killer for hire in the Trade 820 channel we were talking about before. Many players will pay 20 or 30 chaos for assistance with something like a 4 Watchstone Conqueror or a 10-way Maven fight, or you can split the loot. So for instance, you might agree with someone, or you might advertise, I'm helping with Maven 10 ways, I get all Shaper Guardian maps, I get all Elder Guardian maps, and you get everything else that drops. If you do this, pay attention to the servers. If you're an Australian, you don't want to be trying to do a difficult boss fight on the Texas server. If you're a Texan, you don't want to be trying to do a difficult boss fight on the Australian server or the Singapore server or the Moscow server. Cyrus is also great early on for his uniques. Not so much the ones that hold value late league, but for the helmet and the jewel, which drop quite a lot and will sell for a lot because everyone wants them. Strategy 7 is really simple. Strategy is old as time, straightforward, fast, clear. Best on builds that have outstanding damage projection, Minimal or no bossing requirements, so you can do it with very low anti-boss DPS. You just need to be able to make screens die. Move speed and off-screening potential is key. Goal here is to just loot exalts, uniques, etc. faster than everyone else is, and faster than the economy is moving. Strategy 8 is Capstone League content, so Domain of Timeless Conflict, Blighted Maps, Simulacrum, and the like. All of this content is super lucrative if you specialize in it and you run it fast. But you need to know what your character is capable of, and you need to build to be able to do this content with low-end gear. Each of them puts different demands upon your character. So for instance, Blighted Maps can be run by glass cannon characters, whereas the Simulacrum requires durability but asks less in damage projection. Timeless Domain requires most of all. And much of this content is getting new drops in 3.16, which might make it particularly lucrative. So the Simulacrum's being extended to 30 waves, the Blighted Maps are going to pick up Uber Blighted Maps as drops in them, and the Domain of Timeless Conflict is getting a very juicy new unique, as well as the access keys for the Uber Domain of Timeless Conflict. Ninth, we're going to go to a pure trade strategy. This is Divination card Arbitrage. There are some Divination cards that are underpriced because they have a high degree of inherent randomness. Keep an eye out for these, and it's often the new ones. In 3.15, Terrible Secret of Space was a great example. You could make a lot of currency just buying every copy of TSOS that entered the market and turning them in, and then turning around and selling these 21, 23 anomalous golem gems to other players. So have a look if you're interested in this strategy at new Divination cards that are being released, and also have a look at old favorites that people have forgotten about. The other thing to note with Divination card Arbitrage is that quite often early on, people will get one lucky drop that's worth more than everything else they've got so far. So imagine that you're a character who opens the first stack deck that you get, and you get really lucky and rip an Alluring Bounty. This is the Divination card. It's a set of 7 for 10 Exalted Orbs. Someone who is doing Divination card Arbitrage might have the capital to buy that from you for 1 1/3 Exalted Orbs. This doesn't seem like a fair deal. You know, they're getting 1.43 Exalts worth of Div card, and they're paying 1.33 for it, but actually it can be mutually beneficial. And Divination card Arbitrage often involves leveraging the fact that you've got a fair bit of capital behind you, and you can afford to buy some of the Divination cards that other people can't really cash in yet. 10th is crafting for the meta. Now, I don't usually recommend this because there is so much competition, but I will just say that Toxic Rain players love corroded, metallic, and jagged fossil crafts. You are 25.461% according to the website Craft of Exile to roll +1 to the level of socketed gems and +2 to the level of bow gems at the same time, and usually you will have a suffix spare for benchcraft attack speed. You have a higher percentage than 25.461 if you use a lower item level. So that 25.461 is based upon item level 86. You can use anything item level 64 and up, and that will increase your chances of hitting that. This is fantastic as a craft if you can source cheap 6 links. Lyra Arthane's Exotic Goods node produces a few, as does Heist. And so that's something that's worth keeping in mind as an option. Now, you don't necessarily need to do exactly that craft. What you want to do if you want to craft the meta is keep an eye on what people are playing and what sort of gear upgrades they're having trouble sourcing, and then you want to produce to that market. And that can be difficult to get your head around, and it does reward a lot of knowledge of the league. Anyways, that's all I got at the moment. If you've got comments or questions, definitely fire away below. I will try to get to them all, but given that we're so close to league start, it may not be until after the league has been going for a bit, because I'm planning on going pretty hard tomorrow morning. May your Volorbs have interesting results, and may your Scourge crafts also have interesting results.